Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns. It's the OG gang today. It's me, Alan, with Sol.
Hello.
And Calvin.
Hello.
Hey, boys are back in town.
Oh, 2021.
Hey. Oh.
Starting off the new year with some old faces.
Today, we're here to talk about Escape Room. I don't really know why. How did this film get picked? I'd never even heard of it.
Because Escape Room 2 is allegedly coming out.
Allegedly.
That got pushed back.
I don't. Did it?
Yeah, it's like out in October or something. I wondered why we were doing this, because I was like, oh, well, Saul normally pushes back all the ones that get delayed.
I can't keep track of what's getting delayed these days. Like, it was meant to be out. Everything's getting delayed. Who cares?
I don't think it's got a date now. And to be honest, though, this is the kind of thing, a sequel that would go like straight to some kind of streaming service, probably. So, yeah. Well, I'm interested to watch this. I was glad to have an excuse, because this was sort of on my radar a couple of years ago, whenever it was that it came out.
Yeah, I kind of was up for an excuse to watch it myself. I actually watched another film called Escape Room that was on Netflix before this one got added to Netflix, thinking it was this film a while ago, and then was really annoyed because it was terrible. And I mean, I'm not gonna, play my cards for this film yet, but this is at least a film with a certain pedigree behind it, a certain amount of money, a certain degree of, it's like comparing the Dawn of the Dead remake to the Day of the Dead remake, to use some films that we covered on the podcast recently. There's different.
I have no idea which ones you're talking about. Though. Honestly, no concept.
There's schlock, but there's like high end schlock and there's low end schlock, and I'd say this is on the higher end of the sort of thing that it is, right?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Just before we get into talking about the film itself, in real life, how many of us have actually been into escape rooms? Because just the format itself is quite popular. My sister certainly loves it. She has a gang of friends, and they go. She's a bit like the guy in this. What was his name? The one who'd been around all the different ones. Nick Dodani is the actor. I know him from Atypical on Netflix. But yes, so I've been to a few myself as well with a couple of friends, and they are an awful lot of fun. I have a feeling that Alan is going to have stories to tell, because I believe you were an actor in an escape room sort of situation, weren't you?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I do escape rooms. I find them a lot of fun, yeah. I worked on an escape room. It wasn't exactly an escape room because it wasn't in a room, but it was the same principle. We did ours out in a park, like in London.
Escape from the park.
Yeah, they came in. They gave us 40 quid each, and we said, "Right, get out."
Was the theme a park as well? Was it just like, look, this homeless man's going to expose himself to you if you don't run away very quickly, hop the fence?
The conceit of it was that I was a secret agent, and that was kind of I was in character,
So you'd sit on the bench with a briefcase, say, "I hear the snow in Stalingrad is extremely cold tonight."
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And then, so they would come and find you. You'd obviously look really, you'd be stood out. And yeah, we had a device. So we had all our kind of, that they had to solve puzzles to get through different layers of it. And then you get to the end and you defuse the bomb. We were very specific that it wasn't a bomb. We never used the word bomb because we were outdoors in London.
Yeah, the SWAT team would descend upon you.
Yeah, so...
How many times, actually, Alan, did it happen that someone taking part in the escape event, let's call it, sat down next to someone on the bench, but it wasn't you, and it turned out it was an actual real-life spy, and they got embroiled in a real-life covert operation?
Oh, it happened all the time. It was
in The Three Amigos and Game Night and films like that.
It happened. I mean, probably once a month, across the company. Obviously, it didn't. Not while I was there all the time. But yeah, we're often getting calls from the secret services and all that, just to find out what's going on. But yeah. So, and we had like puzzle boxes that they had to solve. So it was all transportable so we could move to the park, obviously. So it was all relatively small, but it worked really nicely. And then we used the location of the park. So one of the clues, for example, could be found on the sign of the park, but you had
like
to decipher
Die Hard
the clue
3.
to get there. Yeah.
Isn't there a bit in the park where they have to fill up some jugs with water or something?
Exactly like that, yeah. But yeah, we used the location as well, and there were keys hidden around the park and stuff. It was a fun thing, and when I started doing that a few years ago, it was something of a novel thing, and it's just the escape rooms in general have taken off over the last 5 years, exponentially. They've exploded. It's just they've gone crazy. But yeah, and then in London, where rental space is expensive, doing something like that you can do in a park for free was obviously a good choice for this particular company.
Definitely. But yeah, I mean, you are right. Like they have really exploded these last few years, and I guess that explains why we have this film. Sol, have you been to any?
No, I was meant to be going to one with a couple years and years back, but then that couple broke up like just as we were about to book it in. So
you'd like it, Sol. Yeah, you'd get into it.
Yeah, just it's you don't want to go on your own, do you? And you've got to find people that have an interest in something like that, and also you want to do it with. So, just not...
Oh, it can be a real strain on a relationship.
How many people did you witness break up as a direct result of what you were doing in the park?
No, I don't know about that. I did. We would occasionally get people who just weren't playing. So, like, you'd get people coming as part of a hen do or something like that. It's the sort of thing you do in the middle of the afternoon before everyone's completely smashed. And so there'd be a group of 10 people or whatever, and 3 of them just don't give a fuck. So they're just sort of sat around. And then, as long as they're not bothering everyone else and they're having fun, it doesn't matter. Or if you're doing it with kids. I did one with kids once, and they all ended up falling out with each other. And then at the end, because they didn't succeed, obviously. I said something along the lines of, "Now, if we all learned to work better together, I think we might have been more successful, wouldn't we?"
I was wondering, because my understanding is these things tend to be quite strict. Like, if you don't escape, you don't escape. That it's you can fail.
They just leave you in there, like Crystal Maze.
Yeah. No, but I think a group of people go to something like this and pay to play a game. You'd think there would be more of an attitude of, we'll really hold your hand if you need it, and kind of make sure everyone wins if they want to. But I've always my understanding is escape rooms aren't quite like that, and you can just fail.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like they certainly give you hints if you ask for it. That was my experience anyway. Like, I know they say it in the film at one point. They say, "Can we have a hint, please?" And there is like someone watching you on an intercom who will say, "Have you checked behind the picture frame?" or whatever, and you'll go and check, and then there'll be a code there or whatever. So I know that we had to have a couple of hints when we were doing ours. But we made it out in both cases, and they give you like an hour or whatever it is, and you need to find all the clues to get the key, to all the code to open the door to get back out.
I would say, as a games master, which is what I was, my aim is to make everyone feel like they could have finished. So you want them to either finish with not much time left, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we just made it," or just miss it, and they're like, "Oh, if we just had a few more minutes, we would have got there." Even though they don't quite register how much you've helped them to get to that point. You practically told them the answers. But also, because the one I did, I was there the whole time. It was totally immersive. I knew exactly what was going on. I knew what they were working on. I knew where they were going wrong and wasting time. And I knew when I could go, "That's all right. They've got loads of time left, so let them just go and make a mistake over there." And I could help them kind of team manage things. And so if they were running low on time, but they were going totally down the wrong road and like they're trying to do something, I could just say, "Hey, don't do that. Come and try something else." So not actually helping them with an answer, but just pulling them away from the wrong turn, you know? So there's all sorts of different levels of help you can give.
There's a van that used to be parked out down the road from where I used to live that said on it something like, "The Amazing Escape Van." And I'm guessing it was a thing that you would hire to come, and you'd be locked in the van and you'd have to try and escape, like figure out how to get out, rather than it being a clever conceit to trick children into the back of a van or something like that.
That's when I worked on one, that was kind of my concept. Like I mean, I don't know if it was an original idea or whatever, but like you get a caravan, you can make every cupboard a locked cupboard, can't you? And do puzzles in everything, and there's loads of space in there to work with. And then take it to like festivals and stuff like that. Make it like a half-hour game, £5 to get in, and just get 4 people at a time, and just churn them through. But yeah, I think just doing something very simply in a van would work, as long as it doesn't look too much like a rape van.
Well, this was they were very clever. They painted the van blue. That's all it needs.
Is that was that it?
As long as it's not white.
I will say I don't think the one in this film had many of the elements I'm used to in escape rooms.
Yes.
Yeah, it seemed to start off quite strong with like, ooh, escape rooms, and then it just kind of completely forgot what an escape room is, and it just became like vindictive torture.
Yeah.
Let's get into the film then.
All right, so yeah, Escape Room 2019, definitely a little bit of a underground hit, would you call it? I feel like this is done quite well on the horror circuit with horror fans.
Right, made over $100 million on a $9 million budget, so that's good. It certainly made an awful lot of money.
And it's not purely the premise, it's not just because escape rooms are hot shit right now, because as I say, there is another escape room horror movie called Escape Room from like 2 years prior to this, which hasn't got a sequel coming out, put it that way.
Well, there is a proper studio behind it as well. It's Columbia Pictures, it's Sony Pictures releasing.
You can tell there's a bit of money there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's got real
quite
actors
slick.
in it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is probably their sort of looking at Blumhouse, looking at the likes of Saw and those things, and thinking like, right, we want one of these where we can just churn them out quick and fast and cheap, and they'll make a tidy little profit. And this is what they're doing. I was expecting it to be more like Saw, if I'm honest. Like, Saw is an awful lot of escape room kind of stuff, and this doesn't get as grisly or gory or anything like that, I don't think. It's not...
Yeah, I was shocked to discover that it's only a PG-13 film as I was watching it. I was kind of expecting a hard R, but it's obviously made with a younger teenage audience in mind, I think.
Yeah, which I was surprised at.
I didn't know anything going into the film at all, and I kind of assumed, I guess, it was going to be a Saw type thing. But I was telling someone about this film a couple of days ago, and they said, "Oh, is it a horror?" And I said, "No, it's not a horror. It's more like action-y, and like I don't think it was horror at all, was it? Because I don't know. Maybe that's just. I know I've got a bit of an odd thing about horror. Like for me, horror tends to be a supernatural, or at least someone kind of actively trying to kill you.
I don't know if I'd call it horror myself, but it's definitely playing in that ballpark. It's definitely playing to the horror crowd.
But for me, it put me straight in mind of Cube. Was the obvious comparison.
Well, that's it. There's a whole... I mean, this is something of a subgenre in of itself, and I struggle to find a name for it. I have a list on IMDb of these films that I've watched ranked, and I call them Game of Death films, which is, I think, a bizarre category Netflix once suggested for me. And I was like, Game of Death? Is that the best name we've got for this? But
oh yeah, I see what they're going with.
Yeah. It's a genre I actually really like, I have to say. You give me a good Game of Death film, I'll probably watch it, and it doesn't have to be that good for me to get something out of it.
But with most of those, there is an element of goriness, or part of the appeal is that you're going to see a load of gross, like blood and guts and all that kind of stuff. This doesn't really dabble in that much. Like we're not supposed to be titillated by any of the gore. I don't think. I don't think we're supposed to want any of the characters to die. Well, maybe apart from one of them later on.
There's quite a low body count, really.
Well, there's only really 6 people. I mean, just the very basic setup of the film is that 6 people from all these different backgrounds, they all receive this puzzle cube, and then it's actually an invitation to this escape room that they all go to, and then they're all connected by personal tragedies and whatever, or a shared experience of a personal tragedy anyway. And then they have to go through all of these different rooms, and then if they don't get out in time, they'll die. That's sort of your very top-line setup.
But the film starts with someone in an escape room setting, and it's crushing him, and it's going to kill him. He doesn't escape in time, and so we get that first scene, pre-credit sequence.
It's not just someone though; he's one of our gang that we
don't know that we don't know that at the time though when we're watching it first time.
Do we not? Do you not see his face?
But we haven't seen him as one of the gang yet.
Yeah.
Oh right. Well, yeah, we don't know it within the first 5 minutes of the film. Yeah.
Well, and can I just say, just before we move on, like some of the most egregious examples of like dubbing, like looping I've ever seen in a film. Like this actor's like, it was clearly filmed without him, without any lines or stuff, and he's just running around and doing all these things. But then they obviously dubbed them in afterwards. So every time his face isn't on screen, you'll hear a line like, "I need to find the code," and like, "Oh, the code is over there. The thing is falling over. The light.
The clock's set to 5 to 2. That must mean that it's on the left."
I got really distracted because it was so noticeable.
Well, that was it. That scene comes on, and I was thinking, okay, they're just showing us some action straight up because then we're going to set up a game. So I figured, like, this is a previous game they've done, whoever they are, and then we're going to see some other people being introduced into this environment. And that worried me because, first of all, this scene was crap. Like you said, this kind of weak acting because we've got no context for it. So he's just been completely erratic. And also, he is just like seeing random sort of fingers and pointing and going, 6, 9, 12. So it's a bit like, what's this? Is this what you think an escape room is? So I was not in a good place at that point. And then we go into the after the credits and we start introducing a few characters, and he's one of them that's getting introduced. So I'm like, well, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
We've already seen what happens to him. That's an interesting choice. Not one that I believe paid off, but...
Well, it's obviously there to try and grab your attention up front and make the film interesting at the start. But I agree, it doesn't particularly work very well.
But then, because then you either think, okay, so we're either expected to know what happens to him, which if we was going to know that, it had to sort of pay off earlier. By the time it actually happens, you're like, well, something's got a twist here. There's got to be something else going on. So it just felt like a weird kind of like, let's try and edit some interest into this. But also, we start establishing the characters, and we get 3 characters established, bit of backstory, just enough to establish them, and then we don't establish the other characters. They just turn up in the same place, and that seemed like a weird choice as well. Establish everyone or nobody. We could have just started at this room, surely.
I appreciate a little bit before we get... Well, actually, no, I think you're right. You probably didn't need the little backstories of... Because we only really see, 3 of them? And then the other 3 sort of understand
I think you need to do them all.
I would have preferred if we had none of them. But no, I kind of agree with you. I think, to me, it just felt like the film was killing time. It was like the film knew it had about 20 minutes up front where it could just not worry about being interesting because it just had to introduce some people who were about to go into this game. And I would much prefer a film where it just opens with them in the game. Because I didn't care about any of the characters. I suppose that's the issue. I didn't like any of them particularly. That's not true. I like some of them. I like the one who was in Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
I don't know which one that is.
He was like the old bordering on redneck kind of archetype.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I did like him as well. I thought he seemed like the only one who was going off piste a little bit. Like maybe just
Yeah.
maybe not quite sticking to the script.
I like him, but it wasn't down to his character. It was down to, this is a charismatic actor who is bringing something to this.
I had the same thing with Nick Dodani, who played the escape room enthusiast, the one who gets killed.
I
first.
liked him as well. Yeah. He was the other one that I enjoyed, and spoiler alert, he is the first one to go, which really annoyed me. I was like, oh great, you've killed one of the best characters right at the start.
I was sure that it was going to come back around, and then he didn't really die. He was the game master all along, and he was just there to sort of set this up for everyone and get everyone up to speed. But no, they don't do that.
Yeah, and that's particularly telling with that death because it seems like an accident, like the ice just breaks and he goes through. As opposed to, well, you didn't get out in time and you got punished, or you messed this up.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, the first room they go into is a big oven. That's the trick, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's done up to be like the waiting room. So I guess the trick is actually, what, you think you're waiting for the game to start? You're in the game now. Surprise, psych. My issue with this is that it was just so blatantly obvious what was going on, but the characters obviously couldn't latch on to the fact that they were in a deadly situation too quickly, but then they still latched on to the idea that they were in a deadly situation far more quickly than I would have liked. I think that character, Nick Dodani, his was the only character, I think, who was still doing come on, it's all special effects. It's part of the game. This is like a 10 grand escape room, for fuck's sake, or whatever. It's like a real high-end escape room, and they've gone all out. They've gone all out on the effects, and wow, that's cool. He was the only character who seemed to think that instead of immediately, oh my god, they're trying to kill us for real. That didn't play for me at all. I think they should have basically shot someone in the head right at the start or something so that you knew what the stakes were.
The thing that bothered me was in I guess it's the second room, but it's like the third segment that they get to when Nick Dodani's character dies, because he's on a frozen lake sort of thing, and then it blows up beneath him and he gets swept away by the current. That bothered me because I think, as Alan just said, that's like, okay, well, we see that there are all these charges set up underneath the lake. That one was set off deliberately to specifically have this, this reaction and kill him, but it's nothing to do with getting out of the room on time or doing it. He was just targeted in that moment, I suppose. And at that point, I was kind of like, well, okay, I don't know if I like this so much. There's clearly someone...
Then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Was it completely arbitrary? Wasn't there some bollocks, like they threw something to him that
you're right, yes, because they were going to get the lighter to melt the ice, but that's not in the spirit of the escape room rules. So because they're bringing in an outside object. Sorry, no, you're right, there was a reason, but
it wasn't part of the game, as it were. Yeah.
And it's not as if it was like a warning for later on to, don't use your own tools or anything, because, well, they don't have any more apart from the lighter, so it just felt a bit arbitrary and strange.
They did set up several times, though, didn't they? The whole, whatever his name is, Dr. Wu or something. Dr. Wu says, play by the rules or something.
Yeah.
But
Wu-Tan Yu, because I was... so like, every time I said it, I was thinking... Obama, what we gonna do? Inject him with the Wu-Tan Yu.
I did have the same thought, I must say.
Well, I watched it last night, and I was quite impressed, actually. I paid a lot of attention. There was no kind of looking at the phone or anything like that, so I think I got most of it. And for the most part, for the first hour, I'm not going to complain about anything, actually. I think for what it is, it's all very nice, tightly scripted and done. I think some of the stuff is a bit, when they have to melt the ice to get the key, I mean, I think you'd be there for longer than the film implies they'd be there.
Well, that's just nonsense, and it wouldn't work. How quickly your hand temperature would come down.
Yeah.
No, it's alright, it does work. I remember I went to a museum exhibit about the Titanic. They were making a huge thing about how they had a real-life iceberg, and it just meant that in the middle of the exhibit, when you were walking around, there was a huge block of ice that they were maintaining with a kind of cold bit of metal in the middle that was presumably refrigerated. And my friend and I stood there for ages putting our hand on it to see how much of it we could melt off to like sabotage the thing. And I mean, we left visible handprints in the ice by, we can't have been there more than 10 minutes because we weren't that old. So there must have been an adult with us who would have been like, come on now, you're being silly. So I think it is realistic.
Well, okay.
There was lots of little things that annoyed me. But
oh yeah, it's
little details like that. Oh, I'll tell you another one. Okay, so they finally get the key. They get out of the ice room and they go into the upside down pool hall. And as soon as they're obviously all freezing to death, hypothermia. They step into this other room and the guy goes, "Oh, well, at least it's warm in here," and takes the coat off. It's like, oh, well, that was very quick. You passed out a second ago from you so cold. Okay. So little things like that annoyed me. Like, it could have had a bit of recovery time between. Like, I accept an unrealistic amount of recovery time, like, say, 2 minutes, which I think would be still 2 hours unrealistic. But, 13 seconds was a bit much.
Would you have been as bothered had they not called attention to it? If he just took the coat off and didn't say anything?
No, I don't think I would have. It was totally unnecessary.
So, I mean, for anyone who hasn't seen it, room number 1 is like a waiting room. They don't know they're playing the game, but then it gets really hot and the temperature starts going up, and then a huge oven appears from the ceiling that starts descending down like heaters, and they realise they have to get out really quickly. And I have to say, actually, the solution to that puzzle was so simple and straightforward to me, I was getting furious at the characters.
What, with the water?
That classic yeah.
Yeah. Well, I quite enjoyed that first room, actually. I thought that there were enough clues to make it feel like, oh, this could actually be something. And I quite liked how the different bits of the oven were sort of like built into different elements of the set, and like different compartments kept opening for a new thing to come out and stuff. I thought that was actually, well, I think it's the best room in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a bit like because the guy who knows about escape rooms, he's like, okay, everybody start looking for stuff. And then they don't search the room at all. Like, they just kind of like, I've looked at this one magazine, there wasn't anything. I think this game's bullshit. So
I didn't like that one of the aspects of getting out of that game was you had to find a screwdriver to then dismantle part of the hatch. It seemed like just opening the hatch and getting out with the heat going up was enough, the screwdriver element just confused it for me, because it's like, well, is that part of the game, or is that like trying to break the rules? And
well, I think that is more escape room like, because in a real escape room, you're trying to make things as complicated as possible, and you want to kind of drip things in, so you'll find something somewhere. And it's like, what are we going to do with this? We don't know yet. It's like, okay, let's put that to one side and we'll figure that out later. And then later on you come up with something and go, oh, it's that thing we didn't know. And so a good escape room has layers and kind of things that suddenly are useful. And it's not just kind of one puzzle, next puzzle, one puzzle, next puzzle. Also, you should be tailoring to deal with a group of people, so there should be more than one thing going on at once. So yeah, having a load of people like holding a block of ice for 20 minutes is not a good escape room, because that's not interesting or fun or anything.
Well, that's not fun because it's not a well-made game. It's just not fun to hold a block of ice until it melts in general.
But then they get out of that room.
That's it. The next room is like a nice log cabin kind of thing. And again, the clue to get out is so easy, I was screaming at the TV. What is the clue? It's blank, you'll go down in history, and then there's like a load of names on the wall, and you don't even have to look at the stuffed reindeer to know that it's a reference to Rudolph. Because they've got the R, haven't they?
I didn't count this as a room in itself. I guess perhaps it is. I just kind of took this and
then
the outside as one.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, but I agree, that was a bit easy. But they get it.
Well,
that
that was there just to wind up that kid, sowing these seeds that there's something deeper going on here, and that these people have been chosen specifically.
Well, that didn't pay off, did it? Because you keep getting these flashbacks and clues that are, or solutions to problems that are built around, as we said before, someone's past trauma. But the first few that we get, it's like something bad they've done. So the read that I got on the film initially, and I think anyone would get on the film, is that they have been selected as a kind of punishment for something evil or bad that they've done in their past, and they're gonna have to confront those things that they got away with. So that Rudolph clue is because this kid was like off his tits driving and implicitly killed a load of his teenage friends in the car by drink driving. There's another similar clue or solution that involves a guy's jacket, and it's because he stole a jacket off this person and left them to die. But it's not consistent with that. It seems like a lot of the people are just legitimately the victims of acts of God outside of their control and had horrible things happen to them.
I guess they had to pull back from that because it would be Saw, wouldn't it? That's his whole thing of getting people together who've done bad things, and this is a punishment, and they've got to pay penance, basically, and go through these experiences, and if they get out alive, great, you deserve to live now, and if not, then, well, you deserve to die as well. I'm assuming they're wanting to not do that, but then at the same time, why put in all this stuff kind of where the obvious answer is that, and then, we'll talk about the ending when we get to it.
And it wasn't even a weird message you're somehow better than everyone who hasn't suffered because you've suffered. It wasn't like an M. Night Shyamalan Split situation where the moral is suffering is good and makes you a better person.
Well, the idea was that they'd all survived things where everyone else had died, and therefore were they somehow intrinsically lucky? And so if you put them in another dangerous situation, will they survive?
M. Night Shyamalan Unbreakable.
Yeah.
Rather than Split. Okay.
Which, the further on we were going with this, it does feel like it more and more difficult to nail the landing. And, well, we'll get to that.
Then, room number 3 is a pool bar, but it's upside down, everything's stuck to the ceiling, like a student prank. And you kind of think, oh, that's not too bad. But then the floor starts falling away like a video game, revealing a bottomless chasm beneath them, and they have to kind of climb around the room, which I liked a lot more than the icy room. I don't know about you. I thought it was more inventive.
I didn't gather that was connected to anyone, though. Did you?
No, I kept waiting for that.
Wasn't the upside down... Didn't that trigger the aeroplane flashback for someone, or some sort of flashback?
Because the oven is the woman who got burned in incendiary attack. Then you got, the little shack, but that was specifically for the guy who was drunk driving. The ice is the guy with the hypothermia jacket. And then there was this room. So...
Yep. No idea.
What was the escape room enthusiast's trauma? What was this one?
Carbon monoxide poisoning, which I think is what happens at the end, where they all go mental because they take the drugs.
So I guess this was for the older guy, maybe? I don't know.
But he was caught in a cave-in.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
anyway.
But I know what you mean. It does start to sort of... This is the point where it starts to come apart at the seams, and this is where we lose the army lady as well. She sort of sacrifices herself, puts herself in an incredible amount of danger. What, that she dies? That she falls to her death?
Everything about it, down to her dangling off the ceiling, suspended by a phone cord, as if it would possibly take her weight for as long as it did before snapping. In fact, it didn't snap, did it? She just let go, if I remember.
Well, I thought it was there for that reason. It was there for the intended gymnastic thing, and that's why it did hold her weight. But then when it snaps, I was like, okay, is this someone else has pushed a button somewhere and just decided, oh no, she's not gonna be in this anymore, or what, really? But yeah, this is where things started going downhill for me quite quickly. The next room is this sort of hospital ward, and each character has a file there sort of talking about their trauma and whatever. This is where they all put the pieces together that they were all survivors of various things.
And this is where the character who I think is poised as our protagonist kind of loses the plot and just starts smashing everything up instead of trying to do the room.
Well, yeah, because she gets something. She's decided that she's going to just break the system, basically. She's already got a plan in her head, but she doesn't tell anyone else. And then they start faffing around with some, what is it, EPG? What do you call that? The machine, the heart monitor thing. Because they come to the wrong conclusion that they need to get a high heart rate, so they stick it on the older guy and then zap him with the defibrillator to give him a high heart rate, but then that just kills him.
I don't know what the thought
and then
process
the guy
there
has
is,
to meditate to lower his heart rate to such an extent that then opens the door.
That whole thing
wasn't too keen on all of this.
They defibrillate the guy. For some reason, they think that's going to make his heart rate go up as opposed to stopping his heart, which is what it does. Which is what they do. That's what defibrillators do. They completely mess up your heart rate, and so your heart has to start again. So I don't know what the thinking there was particularly, but I liked it. It was sort of an intense moment, and it didn't make sense, but they're not in a situation that makes sense. They're not thinking clearly, so it kind of worked. I think it's more unrealistic that he just takes his shirt off to reveal a rippling body so that he can meditate his way to freedom. That seemed weirder somehow.
I think I would prefer it if it was a character that didn't turn out to be a murderer that did it. Like, I don't know, like, I like the idea that they're all sort of panicking and flapping around and do something wrong that ends up in one of them dying, but the fact that it's that guy and then he ends up like, oh, well, you only survived because you killed the guy who you were on the capsized boat with and all that. This is when it really started losing me here, this whole thing.
Yeah. So then they go through into this other room, which is the trippy room, and they have to fight over the antidote, and it's the scrawny kid that wins more by luck than anything else. And then he gets dropped into this other room, which is where we saw at the beginning.
Yeah, that last room was a real fucking they'd run out of inspiration and desire to do anything, I think. But at the same time, it's like, why are we going to make our best work for two people? Everyone's going to be dead at this point in the game.
You mean the last room as in the one that we opened the film with, or the one with like the spinny floor and the antidote?
No, I like the spinny floor one. That was fun. That took me back to being in the Jungle Bungle as a kid or something like that. You know.
Well, actually, that one that opens the film, that one was the most relatable one for me. Anyway, those are the ones that I've experienced have mostly been like, where it's like, oh, it is some sort of room and lots of different things everywhere.
But I think that's why it was a bit of a crap one to end the film on, because it's like, oh, this is just like an actual escape room.
Right.
That should have been the first one. It should have been like a normal escape room, and then...
Well, I don't even know, like, the last one didn't even really feel like an escape room with the spinny floor and stuff. It was just like, aha, we've poisoned you, find the antidote, and then they scuffle for a bit, and then they
have
find
a fight.
It. Yeah.
We've glossed over the very start of the film. We're introduced to a scientific principle, which is the notion that if you measure something, then... Oh, what is it? It's annoying because I was always under the impression that you can't measure something without affecting the outcome. But this was like contradictory to that. But I did look it up, and it's a real thing. No,
that's what it was saying. Like you can't just by observing something, you are affecting it.
And it's the driving force that leads that character to begin smashing up the security cameras, watching them, because she got taught this in science and believes that smashing the cameras will allow them to get out and beat the game because they'll no longer be playing by the game rules or something.
I mean, in a more direct sense, if they can't see them, she can pretend to be dead and then sneak up behind them and smash them in the back of the head. That is, in a more direct sense, a way of beating the game. as opposed to, some sort of quantum physics metaphor.
Well, this is it. It was like, why don't they just have her say, "Oh man, I don't like that they're watching us and getting off on this. I'm not playing by their rules," and then she does it.
Yeah.
But she's being a hindrance to the other people trying to get through that room at that point.
Especially because she's the most valuable person as well. She's the one who's doing most of the figuring out here as well. So by removing herself from that, she's doing the others a disservice. And she doesn't say anything to them. It's just like, nah, I'm getting out of here. Which, fair enough. She doesn't know them.
So yeah, the twist is she only pretended to be poisoned. She actually used some oxygen. And so then she breaks out. And the other twist is that when we saw that guy getting killed in the first scene, actually we cut away just as he didn't get killed and he pops out of a fireplace.
His legs are like crushed to fuck though, which the film seemed to gloss over pretty happily.
But we get to this kind of reveal where it's like, oh, we're going to see the games master. It's like, there's no way this can pay off. There's no way that they've got some great twist here that's going to make so much sense and go, oh my God, that's amazing. And it's not. It's just a bloke, sort of a beardy bloke.
But that is Dr. Wu Han Yu, isn't it?
But
he like you would think someone with a name like Wu Han Yu.
It's Wu Tan.
You might be forgiven for thinking, it might be an Asian actor, East Asian. But I'd say he evokes more than anyone the likes of maybe Lars von Trier.
Well, he's not.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, he's not Wu Han Yu. No one's Wu Han Yu, are they?
It's Wu Tan Yu.
Wu Tan Yu, sorry. It's just an anagram. And he even says, like, they say, like, oh, you designed this? And he's like, I didn't design this. I'm just kind of here to run things. So I guess that was to kind of save a bigger reveal for later down the line.
I do feel like they really fucked themselves with that casting, though. Not to... What's that guy called? The character?
The Game
Master?
Master?
What's the actor called?
Yorick Van...
Games Master Wu Tan Yu. Yorick Van Wegeningen.
Well, what are you looking at? Where are you getting this casting information?
IMDb.
And the character is Dr. Wu Tan Yu?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Games Master. He's credited as Games Master Wu Tan Yu.
Oh, I didn't think Wu Tan Yu was a person. I thought it was just an anagram. Huh,
well,
okay.
That's his nickname, whatever. He's from the Netherlands, this actor. And I don't want to be too mean about him, but it just feels like you went for your Werner Herzog, your Udo Kier. You made Dieter Laser, who's now sadly no longer with us. And you work down the list and you've ended up with this guy, and he's just not good enough for this kind of scene-stealing, scene-chewing, charismatic
there's
kind of
no
a role, isn't
stealing going on here. It's just they even build it up as a dramatic reveal, like he finally turns round and you see him. It's like, oh,
well, that's it.
And this needs to be a Jeffrey Combs or someone, or just someone giving a good performance, a compelling performance.
Compelling, that's what it needs to be, not good.
When he first turned around, because they were building up to it so much, and then we finally see his face, I don't know if my brain just did something to connect to a dot that wasn't there, but I thought it was Colin Firth at first. Because I was just sort of like, oh wow, and then I was like, oh, I have no idea who this is actually. But they treat it like it should be this big reveal, and then it's not. And then there is this whole thing that they say like, oh, how have you
Colin Firth seriously let himself go. I mean, Jesus Christ, that is.
But then they do this thing where it's like, oh, you're not even the main guy here, you're just somewhat you are a boss battle for this film, but they become so preoccupied in the last 20 minutes with setting things up for further installments that it's just like, oh, this doesn't mean anything then. And it's like, oh no, the guy who designed all this is somewhere else, and it's okay, well, what does this mean then? Does this mean anything? Oh, and what's the whole point that they're all there? Rich people are betting on them or something.
Yeah, basically, it's just fun. It's like Rat Race. It's just a fun game to watch.
Right.
And I understand that. I appreciate, that's the most dangerous game modernized for, a contemporary audience.
Yeah, but then do we need to see people actually betting or doing something, or I don't know. It feels
Yeah,
weird
we need to see John Cleese on an aeroplane with a load of other white old men throwing money at each other. Absolutely, and the film will be better for it.
And then they're going to kill the game master's going to kill him anyway for some reason.
Yes, but then the young girl runs in. Turns out she's firearm trained. She really knows how to handle a weapon. She can only just be barely old enough to have a gun. So I don't know what. Anyway,
it's America, Alan. You start getting trained up with a gun at like age 3.
She saves the guy. They run away. She takes the police back there like 4 hours later, and everything has not just sort of been abandoned, but been completely changed into a different building altogether.
It's not been completely changed. They've like painted over it and stuff, haven't they?
They've obviously done more than that, though, haven't they? And I just don't like that kind of supernatural level of, well, it's some sort of rich people thing, isn't it? I don't know. They can do whatever they want. Like the Illuminati or something. It's just a bit too much.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree. I think the ending really, and this is like the first of about 3 endings that we get for the film, because again, they're really setting up this whole like, oh, we'll just find out next time, and I think that's where it falls down. Like, even if when you look at the original Saw, like whatever you think about the film, I think it is quite a cool twist at the end that, oh, the guy in the room is actually alive and he's the one. And I think there are some nice twists and turns in that film. Here, there aren't. It's just, oh, you're just here because rich people.
Well, the problem with the whole come back next time and find out what's really going on thing is that you have to care, and
yeah.
Overall, I'll say it, I enjoyed this film, but I couldn't give a shit about the bigger conspiracy and the bigger world of it all. I just want a nice little self-contained bit of nonsense with people in death traps, Yeah.
And I thought we'd moved beyond that. I thought we'd moved beyond the whole kind of Marvel, the Mummy with Tom Cruise. We need to set up 12 films down the line to make this work. And particularly with a film like this, where it, very low budget, and I just don't. But yeah, no, because after we get the whole like, oh, it's all been changed and we don't believe you, young lady. She and the surviving young chap are having lunch, and then she's all like, oh, I'm going to go and find out. I've discovered their address and we're going to go together and find out what's going on. And then there's actually some other kind of big elaborate escape room set on a plane being developed with like Blofeld on a digital screen going like this mysterious dark out blackened figure just being like, oh, we will get them next time or whatever. It's Dr. Claw. It's really, I hated it.
And the other issue I have with that is that they're the 2 characters I am the least excited to follow into a sequel.
Yes.
I'm up for coming back and watching Escape Room 2, but I kind of hope you'll refresh the, characters.
You just have new characters and a new escape.
Or maybe get oh god, who's the sort of person you'd get in this film? I've already said Jeffrey Combs about 3 times, but I get me a Jason Mewes or a Robert Englund's too old, someone like that. Get me some horror icons, chuck them in there. And great. I don't care about the 2 least interesting characters in the whole thing.
Well, these 2 are coming back for the next one. So,
yay!
In starring roles. Looking at the cast list, the only person that I recognise is someone called Isabella Furman, who is the girl from Orphan.
Oh, yes.
And she's been in other stuff. I think was she in Hunger Games or something like that? I know the
name.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking now. I don't know any of these names.
And maybe they are saving someone to be the surprise, because they're obviously hedging their bets. Like, they don't show the puzzle maker himself at the end of this film. It's just a shadowy figure on a screen. So they're clearly hoping somewhere down the line, I guess, that they'll get someone notable for that part. But
who do you think they'll get? They've got more money, probably, to play with now for the second one.
Who would be someone recognizable? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it can't just be an older horror icon. It has to be someone sort of recognizable. Yeah.
Oh, they're going to go for someone like Sigourney Weaver, but it's going to be like the 97th name on that list because Sigourney Weaver's not going to do this.
Rick Moranis.
What's Robert Patrick up to these days? I reckon he's the guy. Ooh. I reckon that's who they're going to get.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. Unless he's been roped into one of James Cameron's Avatar sequels, in which case it might be too expensive now.
I mean, I must say, I've made any broad comments, but I was not particularly expecting to like the film, and I don't think it started that well. But as many complaints as I've had, I did like it, and I thought what I liked about it was I thought the characters were all really engaging. I thought the acting was solid, and I thought that going into each room, it was fresh enough. There were some new ideas, new information dripping through. And basically, I got to the end of it, and it had completely held my attention for the whole time. Like I think you said, Calvin, earlier, I wasn't checking the phone or anything. And I have to say, that's, for a shitty little throwaway film, that's pretty good. And it was really visually great. I didn't feel like I was getting a load of CGI thrown at me. It felt very it'd gone quite practical for the most part, Obviously, when the floor falls away, I realise it's not a real abyss, but, it all just looked really cool. And I knew it wasn't going to pay off at the end, so I wasn't really disappointed, because there was no way to pay it off. but yeah, it was all right.
Go on then, what'd you rate it, Alan?
I gave it a 7.
Oh!
Wow.
Bloody hell!
Well, I'm really pleased to hear you say that, Alan, because this whole episode I've been like, oh, I'm going to take a load of shit at the end by admitting that I actually quite enjoyed this film. I mean, yeah, I think it's a fucking stupid film. There's a load of issues with it, but taken for what it is, I think it's a really good job of it. And, like I say, I've seen this exact same film done really badly. And, even if it's only because this film had more money behind it, I also found it really engaging and entertaining. I do think it completely fell apart in the third act. That attempt to wrap everything up was just dog shit. But like you, I don't think I expected it to really stick the landing. And I think it did a worse job of trying than I was anticipating. But it wasn't enough to ruin the film for me. Like, overall, I enjoyed it, and I'll probably check out the sequel when it comes out. So I also give it 7 out of 10.
Wow. Huh. I thought I was going to be the generous one coming into this. So that's wow, that's interesting. I echo exactly what both of you were saying, and particularly Alan, actually. Like, it really did engage me, and for the first hour or so, even the beginning stuff with all the character setup, I was fine with it. And once the rooms got going, the first, 3-4, I was, quite invested in. I liked that even though there are some characters that they spend more time on at the beginning than others, I didn't think it was too telegraphed who, the final girl was going to be as such, which... Do
you know what, right?
Was nice.
Just as you bring that up, that was another thing I liked about this. I had absolutely no idea who was going to die, who was going to make it to the end. I know that we had the one girl who was the nice person, so you think she's going to survive or whatever. But I thought it was totally within reason that they would kill her to surprise you. Like, that would have been totally believable. And I that was another thing I liked about it. I could not predict what was going to happen next. When they went through a door, I didn't know what was coming, and I didn't know if one of them would just get stabbed in the face, and that would be it. And so I think that's quite good. I think that's quite a good thing to have in a film.
That's interesting to say. We open on one of the characters having made it to the end.
Well, that was... I kind of knew that couldn't be the end, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think we're all on the same page for probably the first hour or something, but then it spirals out of control for me very quickly around about the time of the defibrillator, and it all just gets a little bit too... I don't know. As soon as it has to start explaining itself, it loses me completely. I really hate the ending. But for the most part, I did really like it, and I liked that it does the Saw thing, but it's not gratuitously unpleasant like Saw is in showing you all the blood and guts. And just in this current state of the world, I don't really want to see that anyway. I'm just happy for something to be nice and clean and neat for the most part. But all that being said, the ending, the last 20 minutes was really detrimental and ruined a lot of my enjoyment. So it is only going to be a 6 from me. But as I said, I think this is a fairly respectable score overall for a film that I didn't expect us all to like so much.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed this anyway. I shall be seeing the sequel when it comes out.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. Come back next week. In the meantime, you can get in touch with us on Instagram or Twitter at DimReturnsPod. And you know what? Why don't you go and rate and review us on iTunes? That really helps us reach a wider audience. Go and do it now.